Okay, fellas. So today we're gonna put the awesome Kastking MGTI Elite through its final test, and that of course is going to be its bait finesse test. Now Kastking claims that the MGTI Elite can cast down to 1/16 of an ounce, which is well into bait finesse territory, and we're going to test that theory today to see if their claims are true. Now if you remember in the unboxing and analysis video, the spool weight of the MGTI Elite was 6.2 grams, and it's also only 30 millimeters in diameter. So that is well into bait finesse territory. So it should be a no-brainer that the MGTI Elite can cast down to 1/16 of an ounce, right? Well, that should be true, but I do see one problem. And the problem is just how deep the spool is on the MGTI Elite. Normally when I do these bait finesse tests on non-bait finesse reels, I fill the spool up with probably not even half of the line capacity in order to reduce the weight. But with this MGTI Elite, since the spool is so deep, filling it up even just halfway causes an issue. And the issue is that the closer the point of line release is on the spool to the spool shaft or the center, the harder it is for the spool to start up. But anyway, let's talk about the other tackle that I'm using for this test. So in order to give the MGTI Elite its best chance at bait finessing, I paired it up with the perfect rod, and that's going to be the famous or infamous Mavlos Plume. And just take a look at this combo. It looks like this rod and reel were meant for each other, at least color-wise, as both sport the colors of black and silver. And wow, yeah, this combo does look sick. Ultra modern, ultra sleek, but as you can see, I've filled the spool up only about halfway with 4-pound fluorocarbon. So before we start casting a true 1/16 ounce lure, we're going to cast something a little bit heavier, and that is going to be a lure that is a little bit over 1/8 of an ounce. I believe it's about 4 grams, and that is going to be the Rapala Ultralight Minnow. I believe this is the number 6, so it's the larger of the two. So a little bit over 1/8 of an ounce should be easy work for this MGTI Elite. And with that being said, let's set the reel up. So of course, since we are doing bait finesse and I feel that the MGTI Elite's brakes are really good, I'm gonna leave just a little bit of side-to-side play on the spool tension, because I do not want anything holding this spool back from starting to turn. So I got about a 1/2 millimeter side-to-side play, and the brakes are on 5, which should be a good starting point. And let's start casting. Okay, boom, look at that. Got an easy almost 20 yards with a simple sidearm flick. Spool perfectly controlled, so looks like at least with that cast stroke, the brakes are plenty strong enough on 5. All right, let's cast some more. Oh! Put a little bit more effort into that cast. Saw some fluffing on the spool, but yeah, look at the distance. Looks like an easy 20 yards. Let's go over this way with an overhead. So perfect spool control on that one. All right, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna dial these brakes down as low as they'll go before the spool will start blowing up. And then I'm gonna come back on camera and show you what the MGTI Elite can do with a little over 1/8 of an ounce. All right, so it turns out that the best brake setting, at least for these conditions, was actually turning it up 1 click. So that means we are at about 5.5 on the brake dial. And let's see what the MGTI Elite can do. So on this brake setting, I can pretty much cast as hard as I want, both overhead and sidearm, without blowing the spool up. And the results are, on some of the best casts, probably getting about 25 yards. Or 75 feet. And in bait finesse, that is absolutely perfectly doable. Because I was recently in Colorado, as you guys probably saw in my last video, and most of those streams I was fishing were probably no more than 15 yards across. Boom. So the extra distance is coming from my ability to cast harder without blowing the spool up, even though I turned the brakes up one click. All right, we'll do a few more and then we'll drop down to the true 1/16 ounce lure. Woo! Had a wind kick up in the middle of that cast, and this is the result. Pretty good blow up, but it's not so bad that I can't pick it out. Now, while I'm picking this backlash out, let's talk about the quality and the feel of this MGTI lead. Now, I've had it out a few times now, and just the overall smoothness and refinement of this reel, especially for its price, is up there. And I'm gonna make a really controversial statement here, but every operation of this reel feels high dollar. It's extremely smooth to cast, and boom, look at that cast. Extremely smooth to cast, very quiet caster, almost to the level of Shimano's ALDEBARAN BFS. For those of you who own that reel, you'll know what I'm talking about. And that's because they are doing the Shimano type silent tune. But then, when you start cranking the handle, boom, look at that. And bringing the lure in, these knobs, they are so soft and luxurious. They have pretty much equaled or maybe even surpassed Shimano's own Septon, which is the industry standard for me. And that is probably the biggest contribution to how smooth the reel feels, is the knob material. Oh, wow. Wind kicked up again. But, I mean, every action of this reel, casting, retrieving, clicking the spool tension, clicking the drag star, feels premium. I guess that's the best way to put it. And here comes a controversial statement. Now, if you've been a long time subscriber, you know that I have a crap ton of reels, a lot of high-end expensive reels, including STEEZs, METANIUMs, ANTARES, Xenons from GARCIA. And overall, this MGTI Elite feels better than any GARCIA I've ever had, any LEWS I've ever tried, any DAIWA that I've ever had. And that's including the STEEZ SV, and any Shimano I've ever had, with the exception of the very high ends. I'm talking CONQUESTs and ANTARES. It's just a premium, refined reel to fish. It makes no noise. Look at this, I'm cranking this lure in. It makes absolutely no noise. Casting the lure out, no noise. No clickety clackety sounds, no loose tolerances. So, I mean, in 10 years, Kastking has come a long way from reels like the Stealth and the Assassin to reels like this. So anyway, I know that's gonna butt trigger a lot of fanboys, especially the DAIWA ones, but let's face it, they deserve to get butt triggered. But now it is time to tie on a true 1/16 ounce lure. All right, moment of truth. And the lure that I've chosen is going to be the crappie magnet. Now, this is a crappie magnet with a crappie magnet jig head. And I believe on the scale, it comes in at right around 1.8 grams. It's just a hair over 1/16 of an ounce. Now, the crappie magnet is a very difficult lure to cast for even a lot of bait finesse reels. And not because of its lightweight, but because the lure always helicopters and tumbles through the air, which of course causes wind resistance, and that can be tricky for a lot of reels to get just the right amount of break to get distance versus spool control. So I picked a pretty tough lure to see if Kastking's claims for the MGTI Elite were correct, and because of that I have turned the brakes up to 7 and let's start casting. Oh, all right. So you saw that the lure went out, but it went out way over there to the left while I was casting that way. So two things are probably causing that. Number one, of course, is going to be the line release point on the spool, and number two, maybe the brakes are a little too high. But let's cast a few more times. All right, so I released real early. The lure went much straighter. It's casting that way, and it went out there probably just under 10 yards, maybe right around 10 yards. All right, let's cast some more. All right, put a little bit more effort into that cast. So distance is respectable so far, and once I start dialing these brakes down, I think we can get a little bit more distance and better accuracy. So that's what I'm going to do off camera and come back and show you the results. All right, so it turns out in these conditions, the best brake setting for me is going to be turning the brakes down 2 clicks to number 6. So this is a rare case of turning the brakes down in order to improve performance on an ultra lightweight lure, and let's see what she'll do. So I don't know if you saw where that landed. We're getting out there about 40 feet, I would say. The wind is kicked up considerably, so I'm not really casting super hard. As you can see, I just had a blow up there. Now I am still having to release a little earlier than I normally would, but once you get used to that, you can expect probably in the mid 40s when it comes to ultimate casting distance, at least for this particular lure. Now I'm sure if I chose a boom, there's a good cast. Oh, had a bite there. But if I chose something like a small mini crankbait, some kind of hard plastic that travels through the air, much better than this crappie magnet, the results would be better. But yeah, looks like Kastking was correct. The MGTI Elite can cast down to a true 1/16, and I'm talking a total 1/16 ounce lure. Boom, look at that. Not a 16th ounce jig head and then adding a plastic. A total of 1/16 of an ounce. Now I will say this, if you think that this reel is going to replace a dedicated design from the ground up BFS reel for bait finesse, the answer on that will be no. True BFS reels, especially the modern day ones with the super ultralight spools, can definitely handle this lure a lot easier, maybe a little bit more distance, but definitely a lot better accuracy, better ease of casting. But in a pinch, I mean, these results are definitely acceptable. So let's say you live in a place where you can bass and trout fish all year long. You know, you can trout fish in the morning and then swap rods and line and go bass fishing in the afternoon. Now, one thing I did think of is that maybe Kastking should release a shallow BFS spool for the MGTI Elite, but then I realized Kastking has their own lineup of bait finesse reels. Remember the Kestrels? So yeah, I doubt that will happen, but I would love to see the Kestrels especially the Kestrel Elite, achieve this level of build quality, refinement, and premium feel. And maybe the next generation of Kastking BFS reels will feature some form of the Halo Vortex brake system, even though, you know, that's going to put some weight on the spool. But this system seems to be pretty darn good for BFS. I mean, we have a ton of brake adjustment to play with. All right, guys, so there we go. Kastking MGTI Elite Bay Finesse test. I think we've proven that this reel can BFS quite easily, and that's always a plus for a top-of-the-line reel, to be versatile. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave a link pinned at the top of the comment section where you can get your MGTI Elite. But in any event, guys, I think it's pretty obvious I'm really impressed with the overall package of the MGTI Elite. It packs premium build quality, refinement, and fishing experience, along with premium performance for what I would consider a mid-range price. And what I want to do is take this reel out onto the casting field this winter and put it up against some other competing reels in cast battles and see what's what. So leave a thumbs up and a comment if you would like to see that, and thanks a lot.